Hi students, in this video I'm going to be going over multiplying and dividing fractions. Our essential question for today is, how is the product and quotient of fractions and mixed numbers calculated? How is the product and quotient of fractions and mixed numbers calculated? So first let's go over the steps for multiplying fractions and mixed numbers. Our steps for multiplying fractions and mixed numbers is simply to multiply the numerators and denominators and simplify if needed. The only different step on mixed numbers is that you first need to convert it into an improper fraction. A lot of people will make the mistakes to just multiplying the whole numbers and then the fractions, but if you do that, you will not get the correct answer. So make sure that when you're doing mixed numbers that you first convert into an improper fraction, and then you multiply the numerators and denominators and simplify if needed. So let's look at a few examples of multiplying fractions and mixed numbers. So in this first problem, it's very simple. It's just fractions. There's no mixed numbers. And you could start with multiplying the numerators and then multiply the denominators and simplify at the end. But if you want, you can also do a process called cross-canceling. And cross-canceling is where you take the numbers that are opposite of each other and see if they can both be divided by the same number to make it smaller. So for instance, 3 and 21 can both be divided by 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1, and 21 divided by 3 is 7. In the same way, both 2 and 8 can be divided by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 8 divided by 2 is 4. Okay? And from there, a negative times a positive is a negative, and when we multiply our numerator and our denominators, we get 1 over 28, because 1 times 1 is 1, and 4 times 7 is 28. So very simple. All right, in the next example, we're going to look at mixed numbers, a mixed number. Now, like I said, a common error before is that some people will just go negative 2 times negative 3 is a positive 6, and then they'll multiply the numerators, denominators, and they think they're done. But remember, your first step says that you need to convert into an improper fraction. So convert into an improper fraction. And so once we convert those into improper fractions, and if you remember that, that's simply multiplying the whole number by the denominator and adding the numerator. So 2 times 6 is 12. 12 plus 1 is 13. So we get 13 over 6, and 6 was our original denominator. And the same process with the other mixed number. But we can now look and see, can I cross-cancel? And 13 and 5 cannot be cross-canceled, and neither can 6 and 17. So now I just will multiply the numerators and denominators. And a negative times a negative is a positive. So I end up with 221 over 30. Now you can leave it improper, or if you want to change it into a proper fraction, you will simply do the division process, where the numerator goes inside the division box and the denominator goes outside. And 30 times 7 would give us 210. With a remainder of 11. The remainder goes into our numerator, and our number over on the left side goes into our denominator. So you could also write this fraction, or this improper fraction, as a mixed number of 7 and 11/30. But either answer would work on your homework. All right, let's look at one word problem. Anita uses 3/2 of a cup of flour in her pizza recipe. How much flour would she need to use for 3/4 of a recipe? So one thing to always keep in mind, especially when you start looking at some of the problems on the homework, is you're trying to figure out if you're multiplying or dividing. In this case, whenever you multiply by a fraction, and that other number is a whole number or a larger number, it's going to become smaller. So think about it. If I ask what's half of 3, it's not going to be a bigger number, it's going to be a smaller number. In the same way, 3/4 of 3/2 is going to have to be smaller than 3/2, because a whole cup for that recipe is 3/2 of a cup. But we're trying to make a smaller recipe, not a whole recipe, a 3/4 of the recipe. So 3/2 of a cup is going to be too much. So we know that that number needs to be smaller. So we will multiply these numbers together. And the first step says that we need to convert into an improper fraction. which gives us 7 over 2 times 3 over 4. And I can't do any cross-canceling, so I'm just going to multiply across and get 21 over 8. Or if I convert it into a proper fraction, that will be 2 and 5/8. And as you can see, these two numbers, they are different from each other, and that second number is smaller because we're talking about a smaller recipe. All right, now take a few minutes and try to solve these practice problems that are on your foldable. Take a few minutes, solve them, and put those answers into Edpuzzle. All right, now let's go over the steps for dividing fractions. The only difference for dividing fractions is step number 1. Everything after that is the exact same that we had before with multiplying fractions. Just in dividing fractions, you have to convert the second fraction into its reciprocal. Same thing over here with mixed numbers. All the steps are the same except for the first step. Okay, the first step. And that first step says convert the second fraction into its reciprocal. And then you just go through the same process as you did with multiplying fractions and mixed numbers. So let's look at an example. In our first example, we have -8 divided by 4 over 5. Although this does not look like it's a fraction, every number is a fraction. So -8 is the same as -8 over 1. And that puts it into a fraction form that we can divide by. Now we have to convert the second fraction into its reciprocal. Basically what we're trying to do is multiply by the reciprocal. So this first one stays the same, so I'm just going to say that we're going to keep it, okay? And then we're going to change this next one. We're going to change the division sign into multiplication, and we're going to flip or find the reciprocal of the second fraction. So -8 stays the same, the division became multiplication, and the reciprocal of 4 over 5 is just its opposite once it's flipped. It's 5 over 4. And then we look at these numbers and say, okay, can I do any cross-canceling? I cannot with 5 and 1, but I can with 4 and 8. 4 and 8 can both be divided by 4. So 4 divided by 4 is 1, and 8 divided by 4 is 2. Okay, so 2 times 5 is 10, and a negative times a positive is a negative. And really, at first, that would just be -10 over 1, right? But really, -10 over 1 is just the same as -10. So as you can see, it's actually a pretty easy process. Let's look at one with mixed numbers. Our first step is to convert into improper fractions, okay? So convert into improper fractions. Once we convert into improper fractions, we know that we keep the first fraction and we multiply by the reciprocal. So we change to addition and we flip the second fraction, okay? So 37 over 6 stays the same. Division changes to multiplication, and 5 over 2 becomes 2 over 5. I can't cross-cancel 37 and 5, but I can 2 and 6. Both can be divided by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 6 divided by 2 is 3. And 37 times 1 is 37, and 3 times 5 is 15. You can leave your answer like this or convert it into a proper fraction of 2 and 7/15. Either answer would be accepted. Finally, our last problem says a recipe for fried I'm thinking there's a word missing there, yields 4.5 cups or 6 servings. How many cups is in each serving? Now, the hint in this type of problem to know that it's division is that you're talking about getting something from a bigger number, 6, into a smaller number, 1. So 6 servings versus 1 serving. So it's like you're dividing it. Okay, you're cutting it up into smaller sections. So look for those kind of words when you are going through these word problems. Okay, so we know that we're going to be dividing 4.5 by 6 to find out each individual serving. First, we need to change it into an improper fraction, and we also know that 6 is going to be over 1. So our improper fraction will be 9 over 2, divided by 6 over 1. We need to multiply by the reciprocal. So 9 over 2 stays the same. Division changes to multiplication. And 6 over 1 becomes 1 over 6. Okay, I can do some cross-canceling here. So then both of these can be divided by 3. 6 divided by 3 is 2, and 9 divided by 3 is 3. When I multiply these across, I get 3 over 4, which tells us that there is 3/4 a cup within each individual serving. And so if I was to add 3/4 up 6 times, that would give us back our 4.5 cups from our total servings of 6 servings. All right, so now you're going to complete the practice problems on the foldable and input those answers into Edpuzzle. If you have any questions, please let me know.